After being reborn, I've decided to do two things. First, I'll write the name of my fiancé Theo Fu's beloved Isla Jiao on the marriage registration form, letting that despicable pair have their way. Second, I'll take all my savings and head south to start a business. In my past life, Theo Fu pitied his childhood sweetheart Isla Jiao and secretly gave her the money I had painstakingly saved over 5 years for our wedding, so she could buy a house. More than 20 years later, Isla Jiao became a multimillionaire through house demolition. Meanwhile, I lived in a dilapidated, drafty house in the countryside, disheveled and toiling without complaint, taking care of Theo Fu's bedridden mother while raising 2 children. On the day I died from exhaustion, Theo Fu was in the big city, dressed in a suit, holding flowers to celebrate Isla Jiao's 50th birthday. When I opened my eyes again, I had been reborn. The employee dormitory was bustling with people coming and going. Seeing me walking hurriedly inside, those who knew me took the initiative to greet me. Today I ran into Engineer Fu on the street. He was buying a ring at the jewelry store. It must be your engagement ring. Right, Engineer Fu is educated, handsome, and knows how to be romantic. Everyone envies you for marrying him. Absolutely. There aren't many people as devoted and considerate as Engineer Fu these days, loyal and devoted. Haha, Theo Fu's loyalty and devotion were all given to Isla Jiao. As for me, he treated me as nothing more than a servant at his beck and call, enduring hardships without complaint. After all, this old servant loved him so much, always putting him first, treating his words as sacred decrees. With this old servant around, he had absolutely no worries. Without responding to everyone's words, I quickly made my way through the crowd and returned home. Closing the door behind me, I headed straight to my room, opened the box by the bed. And inside lay the familiar metal case. I reached out and opened it. The neatly arranged money in the iron box came into view, and I let out a sigh of relief. Thank goodness, there's still time. I picked up the money from the iron box and counted it carefully. Neither more nor less, exactly 5,000 yuan. This was the salary I had painstakingly saved over 5 years of hard work and frugal living. In my past life, I scrimped and saved, tightening my belt to stash away this money, dreaming of marrying Theo Fu and building a happy family together. But how did Theo Fu treat me? Behind my back, he secretly gave this money to his childhood sweetheart Isla Jiao to buy a house, afraid I'd find out the truth and confront him. He even lied to me, saying the money was stolen by a thief on his way to buy wedding supplies. I never doubted Theo Fu's words and even comforted him, saying we could always earn the money back. Later on, Theo Fu's mother fell down the stairs and broke her leg. Theo Fu said his mother was ill and needed someone to take care of her. Concerned for his situation, I voluntarily resigned and went back to the countryside to care for his mother. No sooner had I returned to the countryside to care for Theo Fu's mother than my job was taken over by Isla Jiao. While I was in the countryside tending to Theo Fu's mother, even handling her most personal needs, Theo Fu was in the city being affectionate and intimate with Isla Jiao. Later, Theo Fu was transferred to work in a bigger city and took Isla Jiao along to enjoy a comfortable life. But he didn't spare a single thought for me, his wife. I spent half my life serving my mother-in-law and raising 2 children. Approaching 50, I thought I could finally enjoy life, only to discover Theo Fu had been secretly maintaining a second family with Isla Jiao behind my back. If Isla Jiao hadn't returned to sell the house and smugly revealed the truth, I would have gone to my grave never knowing Theo Fu's true nature. Knowing the truth, I won't marry Theo Fu in this lifetime. I'm taking my money and leaving this place. I took the money out of the iron box, put it on me, and went out. Since I planned to go south to do business, I should first check the train tickets. I headed straight to the train station and on the way saw Theo Fu and Isla Jiao walking intimately side by side, carrying large and small bags. Coming out of a shop, spotting Theo Fu and Isla Jiao, I quickly ducked into a nearby store to avoid them. Unexpectedly, the two of them followed right in. Theo Fu was accompanying Isla Jiao on her shopping trip, his eyes completely fixed on her, oblivious to my presence. They browsed items at a counter some distance away from me. While selecting items and chatting, Isla Jiao asked Theo Fu in a sweet, coquettish tone, "Brother Fu, will Elle agree if you give her job to me?" Wasn't it only after Theo Fu's mother broke her leg and I resigned that my job became available for Isla Jiao? Could it be that in the previous life, Theo Fu had already planned for me to resign so Isla Zhao could take over my job. I was utterly astonished and turned my gaze toward Theo Fu. Theo Fu's usually icy face wore a gentle smile, and his voice was incredibly soft. She has no choice but to agree. Don't worry, I've already figured out a solution. In my past life, Theo Fu had always spoken to me in a strictly businesslike manner, his face perpetually expressionless. I had always assumed that was just his personality. I never imagined that the reason he wasn't gentle with me was simply because I wasn't the person he wanted. Isla Zhao's face lit up with joy upon hearing Theo Fu's words. Thank you so much, Brother Fu. You've been so kind to me and my son. It's the least I can do. Hearing Theo Fu's response, Isla Zhao's eyes darted thoughtfully, looking pitifully at him. Brother Fu, it's just that Xiao Gang and I are new here, and we don't want to keep troubling you. If only we could have a place to stay. Isla Zhao bit her lip with such a pitiful expression that it tugged at my heartstrings. Theo Fu couldn't bear to see her like that. He comforted her softly. Don't worry. I'll find a way to help with the house situation. How can you possibly find a way? You're living in a dorm yourself right now. Isla Zhao's heart-rending expression was impossible to resist, not just for Theo Fu, who had feelings for her, but for any ordinary man. Theo Fu thought for a moment and finally spoke up. I've already made arrangements for the house situation. Elle's father was a long-time worker at the factory, since he passed away on duty. The factory leadership decided to offer a 3-bedroom apartment at a discounted price for Elle to purchase as priority. I've decided. That apartment will be given to you to apply for instead. The excitement in Isla Zhao's eyes was impossible to hide. Really? But wouldn't Elle object? Just don't tell her. Theo Fu replied casually. This doesn't seem right, does it? Isla Zhao voiced her hesitation, but then quickly changed her tone. But Brother Fu, I'm new here and don't have any money. I also have a child to support. Even if the apartment is given to me to apply for, I wouldn't be able to afford it. Theo Fu was completely taken by Isla Zhao's delicate and dependent demeanor. Don't worry, I'll figure out a way to handle the house payment. Just relax and wait for my good news. Hearing Theo Fu's words, Isla Zhao immediately wiped away her tears and smiled. Thank you, Brother Fu, you're so good to us, mother and son. Xiao Gang and I will never forget your kindness in this lifetime. Between you and me, there's no need for such formalities. The two shopped for daily necessities side by side and left together, completely unaware of my presence not far from them. I never expected Theo Fu to go this far for Isla Zhao. Turns out, the low-priced house Isla Zhao bought in her previous life was actually compensation from the factory allocated to me after my father's death in the line of duty. Yet Theo Fu took it upon himself to secretly divert the house to Isla Zhao midway, even using the money I had painstakingly saved for our wedding to pay for it, using my money to buy my welfare house. Isla Zhao didn't spend a single penny throughout the whole process, reaping the benefits effortlessly. How deeply in love is Theo Fu with Isla Zhao? If they hadn't taken advantage of me, I couldn't help but sing praises for their great love. But now, only 3 words come to mind. What a scumbag couple. I had originally planned to go to the train station to buy a ticket, but after hearing Theo Fu's words, I immediately changed my mind and headed straight to the factory to find the supervisor. Hearing my explanation, the leader was surprised. You and Engineer Fu are about to get married. So we didn't approach you directly and instead discussed this with Engineer Fu. He said he would prepare the documents for you to sign and then submit them. However, we've already reminded him several times, and he still hasn't prepared them. Upon hearing the leader's words, I suddenly recalled an incident from my past life. Around the same time back then, Theo Fu came home with some documents for me to sign. Could that document be the housing compensation materials? In my past life, I believe Theo Fu signed his name without even reading the contents. That's why Theo Fu took advantage of the loophole. This time, I'll strike first to gain the upper hand. I told the supervisor, he is him, and I am me. This is the compensation the factory gave to my father, and it can only go to me, his only daughter. Theo Fu and I are not married. He's just an outsider. He has no right to make decisions for me. I'll handle the house matter myself. The leader found my reasoning sound and gave me another set of property purchase documents to fill out. Without delay, I promptly filled out the forms, paid a 2,000 yuan deposit on the spot and received the keys to my new home in this lifetime. Isla Zhao and Theo Fu can dream all they want about scheming for my property. They're just daydreaming. With the new house keys in my pocket, I stopped by a roadside wonton shop for a big bowl of steaming hot wontons before heading back to the staff dormitory. Theo Fu has already returned and is sitting in the living room with a grim expression. Ever since we finalized our wedding date, I gave Theo Fu a copy of my dormitory key, and he gave me one of his in return. Before, Theo Fu and I kept to ourselves without interfering in each other's lives. Now that Isla Zhao and her child have arrived, Theo Fu, feeling sorry for them having nowhere to stay, voluntarily gave up his dormitory for Isla Zhao and her child to live in. He himself moved into the other vacant room in my dorm. Seeing me return so late, Theo Fu was very displeased and asked sharply, Yang, where have you been? Why are you only coming back now? Normally, I would have fawned over him like a lapdog the moment he frowned. Today, I replied coldly, I went out to take care of some business. Theo Fu sneered, what business could you possibly have? I ignored Theo Fu and turned to enter my own room. Theo Fu was tall, handsome, and cultured, an engineer at the factory. I loved him to the core and had always fawned over him to the extreme. He had never been thwarted by me before, and my attitude left Theo Fu choking on his own frustration. Seeing me walk straight into my own room without a word, his frustration was palpable, and he immediately got up and followed me in. Yang, what's gotten into you today? By the way, where's all the money you saved? It's all gone. So he had already gone through the box where I kept my money while I was away. I gave him a cold smile and said, you went through my box. Theo Fu, what do you mean by going through my things without permission? I love Theo Fu. Foolishly dedicating everything I have to him unconditionally, Theo Fu has long considered my money and all my belongings as his own private possessions. It never crossed his mind that I would confront him like this. Theo Fu's face flushed red. I didn't mean, I just thought since we're getting married soon, we'd need to buy things for the wedding. Haven't you saved up quite a bit? I figured we could use that first. Haha, last time. He used the same excuse to swindle my money and give it to Isla Zhao. Now he wants to pull the same trick again. He really has no shame, I said coldly. If you want to buy wedding stuff, use your own money. Why are you rummaging through my things? Or do you plan on not spending a dime for your own wedding? Making a woman foot the bill. Aren't you afraid of becoming a laughingstock? My tone and attitude infuriated Theo Fu, never one to take criticism. He immediately snapped, Yang, what's with your attitude? I looked coldly at the furious Theo Fu. What? Did I say something wrong? In this factory, who gets married without the man spending money? Why does it have to be my money when it comes to us? Are you even a man? Theo Fu, humiliated by my words, stormed out and slammed the door. I closed the door and checked the room. It had been rummaged through and looked messy. Theo Fu must have searched my room for the money. Luckily, I had already reincarnated and taken the money first, beating him to it. Otherwise, I'll fall into his trap again. That night, Theo Fu didn't come back, and I didn't bother with him. I knew Theo Fu was waiting for me to go find him and beg him. After all, in my past life, I never dared to argue with him, let alone say a single harsh word to him. Suddenly being confronted like this by me, his pride couldn't take it, and slamming the door on his way out was his way of showing his attitude. Theo Fu must be waiting for me to grovel and coax him like I used to. But this time, he's overthinking it. I didn't care where Theo Fu was last night. It was probably just with Isla Zhao anyway. Theo Fu likes Isla Zhao so much that he'd go through fire and water for her. I'm now voluntarily stepping aside to make way for Theo Fu and Isla Zhao. He should be very happy and will surely seize the opportunity to get cozy with Isla Zhao. But I was wrong. The next morning, Theo Fu actually came back on his own. Theo Fu brought breakfast, steamed buns, fried dough sticks, and soy milk. The steaming food was placed on the table. When I came out after washing up, he even greeted me with a smile. Breakfast is ready. No point in refusing free food. So I sat down at the table and started eating the steamed buns. Theo Fu kept staring at me, but I had no intention of talking to him and just focused on eating. Seeing this, Theo Fu had no choice but to speak up first. I apologize for my attitude yesterday. Is the sun rising from the west? I looked up at him mockingly, and a trace of embarrassment flashed across his face before he continued speaking. A colleague of mine had some trouble at home and needed money, so I lent her all the money I had saved for wedding supplies. That's why we have to use your money to buy the wedding supplies now. If I was still the Elle Young from my past life, whose heart and mind were solely devoted to Theo Fu, I would have unquestioningly believed his ridiculous lie. It's just that I've long since transformed, and I sneered inwardly, knowing he was lying. The goal was to trick me out of my money to buy a house for his beloved Isla Jiao. It's not just him, Theo Fu, who can lie. I, Elle Young, can too. I swallowed the dumpling and took a big gulp of soy milk, putting on a sorrowful expression. Yesterday, my attitude wasn't good, but there's a reason for it. When I went shopping yesterday, my money was stolen, so What? Theo Fu stood up abruptly, losing his composure. The excuse I came up with was the same one he had used to lie to me in my past life. In my past life, I chose to believe his lie, but this time, Theo Fu looked at me with a skeptical expression on his face. He didn't believe my words, yet he couldn't find a reason to doubt me either. Since I had always obeyed him unquestioningly and treated him like a deity, Theo Fu didn't believe I would lie to him. Without getting the money from me, he couldn't buy a house for Isla Jiao. In this day and age, with a monthly salary of just over $2,000 was no small sum. Borrowing such a large amount on short notice was impossible. Theo Fu angrily slammed the door and stormed out once again. I ignored Theo Fu's impotent rage, had breakfast, and headed to the factory. I planned to leave this place and head south to start a business, so naturally, I no longer wanted this job. Even if I didn't want it, I wouldn't let Theo Fu and Isla Jiao, that despicable pair, benefit from it. I planned to sell my job to make some money. The factory's performance is quite good now, and there are plenty of people eager to buy a job for money. When word got out that I wanted to sell my position, several interested parties approached me to inquire about the price. My asking price wasn't high, and I eventually reached an agreement with someone. The other party is planning to change jobs for his wife, but he doesn't have the money on hand. He needs to go back and discuss it with his wife before borrowing some more. After setting a time with the other party, I returned to my place in high spirits. I had just sat down and taken a sip of water when Isla Jiao came over. Isla Jiao came deliberately to provoke me. She swayed her slender waist as she walked up to me and boastfully told me, "Sister Elle, yesterday Brother Fu spent the whole day with me helping me buy necessities. I didn't bring any money, so he used his salary to pay for everything. He even said that since I'm new here and don't have money to live on, he'd give me half of his salary to use in the future." These were the exact words Isla Jiao had said to me in my past life. Back then, I trembled with anger, scolded Isla Jiao for being shameless, and made a scene with Theo Fu. In the end, I gained nothing from it. Instead, Theo Fu only grew more and more disgusted with me. This time around, when Isla Jiao pulled the same trick again, I didn't react at all. My gaze fell on Isla Jiao, noticing that the brand new clothes she was wearing looked strangely familiar. Wait, isn't this the outfit I bought for my wedding? When did Isla Jiao take my clothes? Seeing that I ignored her provocation and just stared at her outfit, the expression on Isla Jiao's face grew even more smug. Knowing I didn't bring many clothes with me, Brother Fu felt sorry for me and gave me your new clothes. Please don't be upset. I looked coldly at Isla Jiao. It's fine. My clothes were bought with my money. Theo Fu gave them to you without my permission. Taking without asking is theft. I'll demand compensation from him myself for this matter. Isla Jiao scoffed at my words. Who are you trying to fool? Would you dare ask Brother Fu for money? With your attitude, marrying Brother Fu is the luckiest thing that could happen to you. Don't think I can't make him break up with you right now. Is Theo Fu really that obedient to you? What exactly are you to him? I retorted with a cold laugh. Isla Jiao was left speechless by my question and grew somewhat indignant. Don't you know who I am to him? If my parents hadn't forced me to marry someone else back then, I would have married Brother Fu, and it wouldn't have been your turn. Is that so? So after your husband died, you sought out Theo Fu to rekindle your old flame with him, with no outsiders around. Isla Jiao didn't hold back. Yes, exactly as you think. I couldn't help but laugh at her shameless face. What a devoted pair of shameless lovers you are. Since you like Theo Fu so much, I'll give him to you. Get out, get as far away as possible. Don't disgust me anymore. Isla Jiao never expected me to act like a completely different person. Failing to achieve her goal, she glared at me with eyes wide in fury. You just wait. I'll wait. Isn't it just because after your man died, you set your sights on Theo Fu and saw him as an easy target? You want money, my job, and even my house. If Theo Fu had nothing, would you still be acting all coquettish with him? Let me tell you, whatever you do has nothing to do with me. Take Theo Fu. I don't want him, my job, my money, and my house. Young will never be a stepping stone for a pair of scumbags like you. Isla Zhao, whose thoughts I had hit upon, glared at me with eyes blazing with anger. Having gained no advantage, she prepared to leave, but the moment she turned her head and saw the person entering the courtyard, she immediately changed her mind. The fury and venom on her face vanished in an instant, replaced by a pitiable, tearful expression. Covering her face, she sobbed mournfully, "Sister L. You've misunderstood me and Brother Fu. We're just like siblings. It's absolutely not the kind of relationship you're thinking of." As she finished speaking, tears streamed down her face, and I didn't even need to look to know that Theo Fu was back. Sure enough, Theo Fu appeared at the door moments later. Seeing Isla Zhao in such a state, his heart ached, and without asking for an explanation, he angrily shouted at me, Young, what have you done this time? Said I was only after your money. She refused to give me the job, wouldn't let me have the apartment, and even accused me of having an improper relationship with you. Isla Zhao spilled everything I had intended to say to Theo Fu, laying it all out without holding back. Isla Zhao also proactively brought up the topics of work and housing. Theo Fu's expression turned ugly. He had never intended to expose his dark thoughts in front of me. Now, having his intentions so blatantly exposed, he was utterly humiliated. After feeling ashamed and furious, Theo Fu angrily yelled at me, Young, you've gone too far. Apologize to Isla. I had long known that Theo Fu was cruel, heartless, and unkind to me, and that he had been using me all along. Despite this, I still found myself tearing up over his blind favoritism toward Isla Zhao. A lifetime of love. A lifetime of devotion. A lifetime of wasted years. All for such a man. I truly wasn't worth it. I weep in sorrow for the ignorance and pitiful state of my past self in my previous life. Seeing my eyes redden, Theo Fu was taken aback and then gestured awkwardly for Isla Zhao to leave. After Isla Zhao left, he closed the door and sat down across from me. Let's talk this through properly. I wiped the tears from the corners of my eyes and looked at him coldly. Theo Fu, unusually, took the initiative to explain. There's absolutely nothing between Isla and me. Our relationship is completely innocent. I just pity Isla. You know how pitiful her situation is now. Her husband is gone, and she has to raise a child. I just wanted to help her. If I hadn't experienced what happened in my past life, I might have believed his explanation. But no matter how much he tried to justify himself, it was useless. I continued to stare at Theo Fu in silence. Theo Fu had never seen me like this before. After hesitating for a moment, he came over to take my hand. I didn't mean to hide the house matter from you. Isla and her child had nowhere to stay, and it wouldn't look good if they kept living in my dorm, so I thought of preparing a house for Isla to move into first. That way, you wouldn't be upset with me over her anymore. How noble that sounds. But why should I give up what is rightfully my house for Isla Zhao? I asked him slowly, word by word. Isla Zhao and I are neither relatives nor friends. Why should I give up my own house for her to live in? Theo Fu was momentarily at a loss for words and only managed to say after a long pause, Isla and I grew up together. I owe her parents a debt of gratitude, so I must repay her. If you want to repay her, do it yourself. Why drag me into it? If I remember correctly, you've already given her quite a bit of money, haven't you? You even promised to give her half of your salary. Isn't that enough to settle your debt of gratitude? Gratitude isn't as simple as repaying money. Can we just help Isla this once? I'm begging you. No, I refused Theo Fu's request. Never expected me to be so stubborn. Theo Fu got angry. We're about to get married. Husband and wife are one. The husband guides the wife. You must listen to me. And if you don't listen to me, if you don't give the house to Isla and her child, then forget about marrying me. Theo Fu finally said what he'd been wanting to tell me all along. In my past life, after my father's death, I became deeply attached to Theo Fu, always seeing him as my salvation. In my past life, my greatest fear was Theo Fu breaking up with me. My greatest fear was Theo Fu abandoning me. So even though I knew his relationship with Isla Zhao was inappropriate, I swallowed my pain and kept silent. I always thought I was obedient and kind enough, and devoted enough to him for Theo Fu to understand my heart. He would then cherish me and treat me well. Unfortunately, the Elle Young of the past never saw that day. She died on that cold, lonely, exhausting, and painful winter night. This lifetime's Elle Young won't be so foolish anymore. I stared at Theo Fu for a long moment before slowly saying, "Fine, then we won't get married." Theo Fu didn't expect me to say this and was momentarily at a loss, staring at me in confusion. I looked at Theo Fu coldly. "Since we're not getting married anymore, there's no need for you to stay here. Please move your things out immediately." Theo Fu stared at me in utter astonishment, his expression as if his brain had short-circuited. No wonder Theo Fu was so shocked and stunned. The Elle Young from the previous life would never have spoken to him like this or kicked him out. Elle Young gave her life for him. Now that we've torn off all pretenses, I don't want to stay under the same roof with this heartless man for even a minute longer. I threw all of Theo Fu's belongings out of the room and hurled them at his feet. The stunned disbelief on Theo Fu's face turned to panic. Realizing I wasn't joking and was truly kicking him out, Theo Fu fled in a fluster. After speaking with Theo Fu to this extent, given his pride and self-respect, I thought that was the end between him and me. But I underestimated Theo Fu's determination to help Isla Zhao. He was willing to do anything for the woman he loved, including threatening and slandering me to force my compliance. 3 days later, after I bought a train ticket heading south and was about to sell my job to the person I had negotiated with before leaving, something unexpected happened. I encountered Isla Zhao's son Xiaogang in the yard. When Xiaogang saw me, he charged at me with hostility in his eyes. I didn't know what he intended to do, so I instinctively stepped aside. Xiaogang fell heavily to the ground with a thud, his head hitting the pavement and soon bleeding profusely. Without thinking, I instinctively reached out to help him up, but the little brat grabbed my hand and bit down hard on it. The pain made me fling him away with force, and Xiaogang fell to the ground once again. He let out a deafening scream, crying out, "Elle Yang hit me." As Xiaogang's shrill cries echoed, Isla Zhao rushed over immediately, without even glancing at Xiaogang. She grabbed my hand and demanded, "Elle Yang, how dare you hit someone?" Isla Zhao screamed and cried while accusing me, and Xiaogang also clung tightly to my leg. Former colleagues who witnessed the scene rushed over to inquire, with Isla Zhao and her son repeatedly claiming that I had assaulted them. At the time of the incident, there were no other witnesses present except for Xiaogang. Everyone's gaze towards me changed, as Isla Zhao shrieked and wailed, demanding that I be taken to the police station. I naturally denied everything I hadn't done, and just as the commotion was happening, Theo Fu appeared. Theo Fu stopped Isla Zhao from calling the police to arrest me. He said he would handle the matter and wanted to have a proper talk with me. By now, I probably understand the purpose behind Theo Fu and Isla Zhao, mother and son, conspiring to frame me. Sure enough, the first thing Theo Fu said to me was, "Xiaogang's injury has both eyewitnesses and physical evidence. You can't escape blame. The police will definitely arrest you." I quietly stared at Theo Fu. Under my gaze, he seemed ashamed and lowered his head before continuing. "I can convince Isla not to report this to the police. You won't be arrested for intentional assault and have a criminal record, but you'll need to show sincerity. Agree to one thing for me." Looking at Theo Fu, who was speaking clearly with his head lowered, my heart turned ice cold. I had long known they were a nest of snakes and rats, utterly shameless, but I never imagined they would scheme against me with such madness. I was still too naive. I thought that by stepping aside and letting them have their way, I could keep myself out of trouble, but I never realized, since they had ulterior motives from the start, why would they ever willingly let go? I am vexed by my own carelessness and foolishness. Theo Fu willingly became an accomplice for Isla Zhao and her child. Things have come to this, and I have no other choice. I don't want a criminal record, I don't want to waste my energy, and I don't want to entangle myself with those two rotten people. I spoke with a hoarse voice. "You want the house? Impossible. I'd rather die than give it to Isla Zhao. That house was bought with my father's life." Theo Fu remained silent for a moment before saying, "We can forget about the house, but you'll have to give your job to Isla. Don't worry, we'll still get married as planned. I'll take care of you from now on." He probably thought I was desperate to marry him. Hearing his words filled me with disgust. Every extra minute spent with Theo Fu made me sick. Fortunately, I had long stopped wanting to marry him or live that unbearable life. Staying far away from that scumbag Theo Fu is now my top priority. After weighing everything, I agreed, fine, the job goes to Isla Jiao, you can leave now. To my surprise, Theo Fu didn't seem as happy as I expected when I agreed. He even tried to reach out and hug me, saying, "You've suffered in this matter, don't worry, I'll treat you well after we're married, I promise I won't let you suffer." He probably thought he was some kind of romantic hero, fighting back my disgust. I avoided Theo Fu's embrace. Once again, I coldly reminded him, "You can leave now." Theo Fu didn't leave. Shamelessly, he claimed he had nowhere to stay and ended up staying in my guest room again. I knew he was no good, just like Isla Jiao, both of them were despicable and shameless. To prevent them from scheming again, I had no choice but to play along. I've already bought the train ticket anyway. In 5 more days, I can leave this place and never have to see these disgusting scumbags again. Theo Fu seemed like a completely different person, no longer acting so high and mighty. Instead, he diligently prepared breakfast, lunch, and dinner every day, trying to build a better relationship with me. But now, all I feel when I see him is disgust and revulsion. Theo Fu took the initiative to buy candies and cookies to please me and actively asked about the details of the wedding ceremony. He probably had a pang of conscience and stopped spending all his time with Isla Jiao, showering her with attention. Instead, he started hovering around me every day. Even when I gave him cold looks, he didn't seem to mind. He discussed wedding banquets with me, debated over the guest list, and even asked about what I'd wear for the ceremony. On the surface, it really seemed like he cared deeply about this marriage, but I felt not the slightest bit moved. I'd already suffered enough in my past life. There was no way I'd believe that a scoundrel like Theo Fu could ever change. To Theo Fu's eager attempts to please me, I responded with only a few icy words. "Do as you see fit." These were the exact words Theo Fu had coldly said to me when I was meticulously preparing for our wedding in my past life. Now, I returned them in kind. Theo Fu's expression was complicated, but soon he was back to trying to win me over. Here's our marriage application. I've already signed it, and now it's your turn. Once you sign, we can go get our marriage certificate today." I watched Theo Fu's eager demeanor and curled my lips slightly. "Just put it over there. Our wedding is in 3 days. We can't delay any longer. It's best to get the marriage certificate today." I don't know why Theo Fu is so insistent on getting the marriage certificate with me. To prevent any unexpected incidents, I didn't want Theo Fu to see my true thoughts, so I said indifferently, "You go ahead with your business. I'll go get the marriage certificate myself after I sign." I've been giving him the cold shoulder these past few days, so my sudden willingness made Theo Fu flattered. "Great, I'll go deliver the invitations first, you sign the papers, and we'll go get the marriage certificate together later." Theo Fu cheerfully went out with several invitations in hand, while I held the marriage report with a cold smile. Just as I was about to tear it up and throw it away, Isla Jiao came knocking at my door again. These past few days, Theo Fu hadn't gone to see Isla Jiao. No matter how hard she tried to get him to leave with her, Theo Fu's change in attitude upset Isla Jiao, so she took advantage of Theo Fu no longer actively visiting me to provoke me. "Yang, even after all this, you're still clinging to Brother Fu. You really have no shame, do you?" I looked at Isla Jiao with a forced smile. "Compared to your shamelessness, I still have a lot to learn. After all, Theo Fu and I are nominally engaged. Unlike you, without any status, clinging to Theo Fu all day just to be a homewrecker." My words hit a nerve, infuriating Isla Jiao. She glared at me with venomous resentment. "You don't actually think you've won, do you? Let me tell you, if you know what's good for you, you'll break off the engagement with Brother Fu immediately, otherwise, you'll regret it later. And if I don't, Isla Jiao, I know you want to marry Theo Fu. Theo Fu is an engineer now, earning over 100 more a month than the average worker, with a bright future ahead. You want to take my place, but why should I make it easy for you?" I stared coldly at Zhao Ruyuan and deliberately picked up the marriage report, shaking it in front of Isla Jiao. Isla Jiao's expression changed when she saw the marriage report, a look of resentment flashing in her eyes. "Yang, Brother Fu doesn't like you at all, so how could he possibly marry you? All his endurance and humiliation are for my sake. Is that so? If he likes you so much, why does he insist on marrying me? Why not marry you instead? That's because Brother Fu can't bear to see me suffer. Let me tell you, the plan to frame you with Xiao Gang was Brother Fu's idea. He had already planned to give your job to me. Initially, Brother Fu intended to use his mother's illness as a pretext to lure you in. But unexpectedly, you suddenly changed. Left with no choice, he came up with the idea of using Xiao Gang to set you up. Isla Zhao wasn't the least bit afraid. She looked down on me and told me everything without hesitation. Brother Fu only agreed to marry you for your house, money, and salary. If he didn't have an ulterior motive, he wouldn't treat you this way. He told me himself. He doesn't like you at all. He just wants to use you. After all, you're easy to fool, obedient, and obsessed with him. Isla Zhao probably expected me to get angry or fly into a rage, but I only felt indifference. After all, I already knew Theo Fu's true nature from my past life. There was no need for her to remind me. I ended Isla Zhao's provocation with a glass of water, drenched from head to face. She stormed off, cursing in anger. With the noise gone, I picked up Theo Fu's marriage application and studied it over and over. I had planned to tear it up and throw it away. But now I've changed my mind. Since Theo Fu and Isla Zhao are so deeply in love, I might as well do them a favor before I leave. I picked up the pen and signed Isla Zhao's name beneath the other one. Then I took the marriage report and headed straight to the marriage registration office. A few minutes later, I received the marriage certificate. Looking at the names Isla Zhao and Theo Fu on it, I smiled and lifted my lips. In this lifetime, I wish Theo Fu and Isla Zhao a long and loving marriage, never to part. Theo Fu returned in the evening, bringing me some pastries again. When he entered, I was tidying up my things. Most of my belongings had been sold, leaving the room and house feeling somewhat empty. Theo Fu also sensed something was amiss. He glanced around and made small talk, saying, I noticed there seemed to be quite a few things missing from the house. I replied indifferently. I threw away what wasn't needed. Then why did you pack your luggage? I lost my job, and I won't be able to stay in this dormitory anymore. It needs to be cleared out for other co-workers to use. So I packed everything and moved it to the house my father left me. I was telling the truth, and Theo Fu didn't doubt me, enthusiastically urging me to eat the pastries he had bought. I glanced at them and a cold smile appeared at the corner of my mouth. These pastries weren't the kind I liked. They were all flavors that Isla Zhao preferred. So, Theo Fu, if you're going to pretend to be nice to me, shouldn't you at least do it properly? I was annoyed. I hadn't planned to expose him, but in the end, I couldn't hold back. These pastries are all savory. I don't like savory pastries. I prefer sweet ones. Theo Fu's face flashed with embarrassment. I remembered wrong. It's all my fault. I'll buy the pastries you like from now on. I didn't say a word and turned to enter the room, seeing my cold attitude. Theo Fu's face showed a hurt expression. He took the initiative to ask about the marriage report. Have you signed the marriage report yet? I signed it, and I've already gotten the marriage certificate. Hearing this, Theo Fu let out a sigh of relief. Where's the marriage certificate? Let me see it. There's nothing much to look at. I've already packed it away at the bottom of a box. It would be a hassle to dig it out now. Theo Fu seemed to believe my explanation and happily went to prepare dinner. The dinner was sumptuously prepared, with both fish and meat. Just as Theo Fu and I had picked up our bowls, there came urgent knocks on the door. Accompanying the knocks was Isla Zhao's voice. Brother Fu. Xiao Gang suddenly started vomiting non-stop. Please come take a look. Without any reaction, I lowered my head to continue eating, while Theo Fu paused his chopsticks to look at me. Unlike before when he would rush out without hesitation, he now looked at me cautiously. If you're worried, go check it out. How about we go together? I'll pass. We're not related, and I'm not a doctor. I'd just be in the way. Theo Fu hesitated when he heard me say that, while the knocking outside grew more frantic, and Isla Zhao's voice took on a tearful tone. Theo Fu finally got up and left. I'll be back soon. I continued eating without much emotion, cleaned up after dinner, washed up, and went back to my room to sleep. Theo Fu didn't return that night. The next day, I calmly moved all the things I had already packed to the new house. After making several trips back and forth, I overheard people in the factory discussing. They said Isla Zhao's son was poisoned last night and almost died. He's still in the hospital undergoing emergency treatment and hasn't been out of danger yet. This was something that didn't happen in my previous life. So I was somewhat curious about it. Why did Xiaogang get poisoned? Though curious, I didn't dwell on it. After all, it had nothing to do with me. It took about a day to move most of the stuff. Theo Fu returned the following evening while I was having dinner alone at the dining table. I didn't even look up when he came back, just kept eating. He walked to the dining table and sat down. Xiaogang was poisoned. It's very serious. Isla was really scared alone. So I stayed at the hospital to keep her company. I impatiently cut him off. Can you not tell me about other people's business? I don't care and I'm not interested. Theo Fu was left speechless by me. After a long pause, he said, "Elle, are you angry?" "No, there's nothing to be angry about unrelated matters." Theo Fu still wanted to say something, but I had already gotten up, collected the dishes, and headed to the kitchen. He stood in the middle of the room, watching me with a heavy gaze. But I didn't respond and went straight back to the bedroom. I was leaving the next day. Calmly, I washed up and lay in bed, ready to rest. The door was knocked. I impatiently asked, "What is it?" "Elle, open the door. I have something to give you." I opened the door, and Theo Fu was standing there holding a red box. He handed me the box with an expectant look on his face. "Open it and see." I opened it without much emotion, only to find a gold ring inside. This ring had never appeared before me in my past life, but I remember its shape, plum blossom shaped, delicate and beautiful. In my past life, when Isla Zhao became successful and came back to sell the house, she wore it on her finger when she met me. At that time, Isla Zhao looked like a noblewoman, radiant with jewels. While I was haggard and worn, Isla Zhao raised her finger to show me the ring on her hand. "This is the wedding ring Theo bought for me." I clearly remember the suffocation, anger, and despair I felt at that moment. So why is this ring appearing before me now? I didn't feel the slightest bit of joy, only disgust. I stared at Theo Fu and enunciated each word. "What do you mean?" Theo Fu smiled and explained, "This is the wedding ring I bought for you. Try it on and see if it fits." I didn't try it on, just coldly closed the box. Seeing my cold attitude, Theo Fu's expression turned gloomy. "I don't want any complications before I leave, so I say lightly, since it's a wedding ring, let's wait until the wedding to wear it. After all, we should pay attention to the sense of ceremony." Hearing this, Theo Fu immediately smiles. "All right then, I'll keep it safe for now and put it on you tomorrow at the wedding." Wedding? There won't be a wedding between him and me anymore. Tomorrow's wedding will proceed as scheduled, but the bride won't be me. It'll be Isla Zhao, after all. Isla Zhao and Theo Fu are now legally recognized as a legitimate couple, and I also know that Isla Zhao won't let the wedding go smoothly. After all, while Theo Fu was busy helping her at the hospital, Isla Zhao still found time to go home once. She stopped me and venomously said she wouldn't let me marry Theo Fu. Tomorrow's wedding wouldn't proceed as planned, and she would stop at nothing to prevent the wedding from happening. Isla Zhao thought her threats would bother me, but I just coldly replied with 3 words, "Suit yourself." The night passed quickly, and the next morning, Isla Zhao came looking for Theo Fu again, still using her son Xiaogang's situation. Theo Fu was in a dilemma. "I'm getting married today." Isla Zhao suddenly knelt down and blocked the doorway. "Brother Fu, it was you who told me to come here with my child to rely on you. You promised to take care of us. Now Xiaogang's life is hanging by a thread, yet you're going ahead with your wedding. How can you face us like this?" Isla Zhao wailed and led Theo Fu away. As he followed her, he glanced back at me standing coldly at the door. "Elle, I'll be back soon. Wait for me. The wedding will proceed as planned." I didn't speak, just flashed a meaningful smile. Theo Fu thought I had agreed. Watching his and Isla Zhao's hurried retreating figures, I spat out a sentence. "Theo Fu, never see you again." I took out Theo Fu and Isla Zhao's marriage certificate and placed it on the table. Then I picked up a pen and wrote a letter for Theo Fu. "I'm leaving. Theo Fu, I wish you and Isla Zhao everlasting love." Putting down the pen and paper, I grabbed my luggage and headed straight to the train station. I entered the train station an hour early to wait, watching the minutes tick by. Finally, the ticket check began, and I carried my luggage as I followed the crowd into the boarding gate. Finding my seat and sitting down, I let out a sigh of relief. In this lifetime, Elle Yang will never be someone else's appendage again. I'm going to find a new life that belongs to me. The train whistle blew as it slowly pulled out of the station, and my gaze drifted through the glass window to the scenery outside. Goodbye, to the place where I've lived for over 20 years. As I withdrew my gaze, I suddenly caught sight of a familiar figure running frantically towards me. Theo Fu. Theo Fu had been absent-minded ever since arriving at the hospital with Isla Zhao. Xiao Gang was rushed into the operating room for emergency treatment, while Isla Zhao sobbed beside him, yet Theo Fu felt no desire to offer concern or comfort, only irritation. He remembered clearly that when he left the hospital, Xiao Gang had already shown signs of recovery, and the doctor had said there was nothing serious to worry about. Why did his condition worsen so drastically in just one night? This shouldn't have happened. His gaze fell on Isla Zhao's face. Her eyes were rubbed red. Yet not a single tear was shed. Looking at Theo Fu looking at himself, Isla Zhao sobbed and leaned in, reaching out to grab Theo Fu's hand. Brother Fu, if something happens to Xiao Gang, how can I go on living? I can't live anymore. When Isla Zhao leaned in, Theo Fu instinctively moved aside. Isla Zhao had fully calculated that Theo Fu would embrace her, and she would then throw herself into his arms, clinging tightly to him while crying. She must stop Theo Fu and El Yang's wedding. She must ruin their marriage, she thought to herself. As Theo Fu stepped aside unexpectedly, Isla Zhao fell flat on her face without warning. The pain-making stars burst before her eyes. Over there, Theo Fu was also staring in shock at Isla Zhao, who had fallen to the ground. Isla Zhao screamed loudly, and just as he hesitated to reach out and help her, a man came running hurriedly down the hallway. It was Ali, an engineer Theo Fu had called to assist with wedding preparations. Engineer Li gasped for breath. Theo, something terrible has happened. Theo Fu's heart sank at the sight of Engineer Li. He withdrew his hand from Isla Zhao and quickly walked toward him. What happened? Is Elle angry? It's not that Elle is angry, it's Elle is gone. Theo Fu doubted his own hearing. Where could Elle Yang have gone? Where could she possibly go? Both her parents are deceased, and now she has no one left but herself. Engineer Li handed it to Theo Fu. Take a look at this. Aren't you married to Elle Yang? How come the marriage certificate is between you and Isla Zhao, and Elle Yang left you a suicide note? Theo Fu snatched the marriage certificate and the letter from Engineer Li's hands. Upon clearly seeing the names on the marriage certificate, his eyes nearly burst with rage. Then, reading Elle Yang's message, Theo Fu immediately dashed outside. Behind him, Isla Zhao's sorrowful cries echoed, but Theo Fu did not look back. Theo Fu had only one thought in mind. He must keep Elle Yang. No matter what it took, he was determined to keep Elle Yang. 15 years later, I returned to my hometown in glory after carving out a path through the tough streets of Shenzhen. Accompanied by my assistant, I returned to Jiangcheng, where I had lived for over 20 years, to make investments. 15 years later, Jiangcheng has undergone rapid changes, with no trace left of its former poverty and backwardness. The factory from back then has shut down, and former colleagues and acquaintances have all gone their separate ways. Accompanied by my assistant as we walked down the street, gazing at the myriad lights of the city, I was overwhelmed with emotions. I recalled my past life in my 30s. Toiling day and night in the countryside, frost and wind have etched my cheeks, my hands are rough and cracked, and I don't have a single presentable piece of clothing. But now, I live in a spacious, bright villa in Shenzhen, drive a car, and run my own company. I married a man who cherishes me and gave birth to lively, adorable children. My in-laws treat me as their own, and my family is harmonious and happy. All of this stems from the choice I made back then. Who would have thought that two different choices would lead to two completely different outcomes? Strolling through the streets of Jiangcheng, the calls of vendors selling sugar-roasted chestnuts reached my ears. I turned my head, and my assistant, already understanding my intention, stopped the man selling sugar-roasted chestnuts. The middle-aged chestnut vendor wore a thick cotton-padded jacket, and one of his legs was slightly disabled. He greeted his assistant with an ingratiating smile, and the familiar Jiangcheng accent made me feel at home. I took the initiative to ask, "Old man, you've lived here for quite a few years, haven't you?" "Yes, I'm a native of Jiangcheng. I've lived here for almost 40 years now." The man skillfully weighed the sugar-roasted chestnuts and deftly packed them before handing them over. When handing over the money, the man looked up at me, and our eyes met. In his gaze, I saw surprise and disbelief. The chestnuts he was handing to me suddenly fell to the ground. His voice rose in pitch, changing tone. You're Elle." I looked at the middle-aged man, his face weathered by hardship and burdened by life's struggles. "You know me, Who are you? I'm Theo Fu. Theo Fu, I stared in shock at the man before me, unable to connect this aged, haggard, and disabled figure with the handsome and dashing Theo Fu. By my calculations, Theo Fu should be under 40 now. Yet he looks like a 60-year-old man. Theo Fu looked at me with a complicated gaze, his lips trembling. Why won't you give me a chance? Do you know how long I've been searching for you? I didn't understand why Theo Fu was looking for me. He liked Isla Zhao so much. And I had already stepped aside for him. Shouldn't he be happy about my concession? But Theo Fu's expression clearly suggested otherwise. In his previous life, Theo Fu wasn't exactly someone who could command the wind and rain, but he did eventually rise to become the chief engineer of a Fortune 500 company, which could be considered a flourishing and successful career. What happened in this life that made him stay here selling candied chestnuts instead of going to a big city? Although Theo Fu and I can be considered old acquaintances, there's really nothing for us to reminisce about. Theo Fu looked at me, too ashamed to exchange pleasantries. The disparity in our statuses filled him with shame. He pushed his sugar-roasted chestnut cart and limped away. I had no intention of inquiring about his affairs. Theo Fu was just a passerby to me. I had long since let it go. Yet the very next day, during an investment negotiation, I unexpectedly ran into the factory director. The factory director looked at me with a sigh and voluntarily brought up Theo Fu. Only then did I learn what Theo Fu had gone through after I left. After finding out that he and Isla Zhao had registered their marriage, Theo Fu refused to let the mistake continue. He wanted to dissolve their marital relationship, but Isla Zhao was unwilling. In order to ruin my wedding with Theo Fu, she fed her son Xiaogang rat poison. The initial dose of rat poison wasn't excessive, and Xiaogang was successfully resuscitated at the hospital, escaping danger. Unwilling to accept the failure of her scheme, Isla Zhao secretly administered another dose of rat poison to Xiaogang on the morning of my and Theo Fu's wedding day. As a result, Xiaogang had to be rushed to the emergency room and underwent several days of intensive care before his life was saved. However, he was left completely incapacitated, becoming a helpless invalid, dragging along her son who had become a good-for-nothing. Isla Zhao was dumbfounded. She had fully expected that after I left, Theo Fu would make the best of a bad bargain and marry her to take care of her and Xiaogang. Never did she imagine that Theo Fu would refuse. Isla Zhao then made a huge scene, forcing Theo Fu to take responsibility for her. Theo Fu finally saw Isla Zhao's true colors. He didn't want to marry Isla Zhao, but how could she let him go? She spread rumors everywhere, claiming Theo Fu had slept with her, which led to me leaving in anger. She demanded Theo Fu take responsibility for her and her useless son. Isla Zhao refused to divorce at all costs, and Theo Fu wouldn't agree to marry her either. The once affectionate couple now couldn't stand the sight of each other. Isla Zhao wouldn't let go and kept pestering Theo Fu relentlessly. Later, she resorted to tricks and had a one-night stand with Theo Fu, after which Isla Zhao became pregnant. Upon hearing that Isla Zhao was pregnant, Theo Fu's mother stepped in to persuade him to settle down and make a life with her. Theo Fu also resigned to his fate and decided to live a good life with Isla Zhao. Just as the two were preparing to settle down, an unexpected incident occurred. Theo Fu's mother broke her leg. Just as she had in the previous life, Isla Zhao had already given birth to Theo Fu's child, and she was unwilling to give up her job to care for Theo Fu's mother. As I had done before, she refused to sacrifice herself, so Theo Fu had to take leave to care for his mother. With no source of income and living off dwindling savings, life became increasingly difficult. Isla Zhao was drawn to Theo Fu's engineer status in hopes of a better life. Now, Theo Fu struggles financially due to taking too much unpaid leave. Moreover, being unable to arrive at work on time led to the factory having complaints about Theo Fu. Later, as the factory's performance declined and layoffs began, Theo Fu, the engineer least likely to be laid off, became unemployed. Isla Zhao, the worker who had joined midway, was also deservedly laid off. Without a source of income, life became difficult. With two disabled family members and a child crying for food, Isla Zhao, who had hoped to rely on Theo Fu for a good life, was completely dumbfounded. She didn't want to stay with Theo Fu, who had no prospects, and insisted on divorcing him to remarry. Theo Fu harbored deep hatred for Isla Zhao, believing his current state was all her fault, and thus refused to agree to the divorce. The two were now in a complete role reversal, locked in a bitter tug-of-war. Isla Zhao was never an easy person to deal with, and Theo Fu refused to divorce her, so she dumped her mentally disabled child Xiao Gang, along with the child she had with Theo Fu, for him to take care of. While she went off to the city to fool around, Isla Zhao was pretty, knew how to dress up, and spoke in a sweet, coquettish tone. She quickly found another man, and from then on, she never went back. Instead indulging in a lavish lifestyle while entertaining men, Theo Fu couldn't abandon his paralyzed mother, so he had to stay in the countryside to care for her, occasionally doing small businesses to support the family. Isla Zhao found another man and came back to divorce Theo Fu, but he refused to divorce her, wanting to drag her down. The man Isla Zhao found had some influence and broke Theo Fu's leg. Listening to the factory director's account and recalling Theo Fu's weather-beaten face I saw last night, it was like a living portrait of my past life. I couldn't help but laugh. The wheel of justice turns, and heaven spares no one.